Hello, Patreon and YouTube, of course. I am Nathan P. Butler, and this is a project update for the various things that I'm involved with here as we near the end of January of 2018. A brand new year with a lot of projects continuing, a little bit of new stuff on the horizon, and some rearranging to the scenery behind me for those who are really paying attention or have been paying attention here for a while. First off, don't forget that if you want to support me through my Patreon, it is patreon.com/NathanPButler, and anyone, all the way down to the $1 supporters, gets their name at the end of an episode like this one in that Patreon supporter thanks section, and will eventually get their names on a special Patreon supporter thank you page in the next edition of A Saga on Home Video, my book, which is now available on Amazon, which will have a new edition, in a few years, once there's enough new content out there to justify it. We did just hear a little bit about how the Freemaker Adventure Season 2 is coming to DVD soon with no announcement for Blu-ray, which is a little disturbing, a little worrisome to me. And of course, we have the home video release of The Last Jedi coming soon, but it isn't officially announced yet as far as what all the options are and all the different places will be. But as we get more home video releases, as more content makes sense to be added to that book, eventually there'll be a second edition, but it's still probably a matter of years away at this point. But again, I am Nathan P. Butler. This is an update for everyone, but if you're a supporter of the Patreon, I want to make sure that you get a chance to get a thanks in here. And I know that officially, the thing that you get from doing the smallest tier on up is just to get your name in the thanks section of those two places. But I did want to go ahead and call out some of our newest Patreon supporters. And because there are so many, I'm just going to run down the list of everybody. So a big thank you first to the nobility of the Butlerniverse. That is that $10 and up tier. Those are the people who are able to get not only the thanks, but also the audio commentaries that I put up for things like the Clone Wars, Forces of Destiny, and whatnot, and get access to that exclusive Q&A each month by posting questions on a question collection thread over on the Patreon page. Those nobility of the Butlerniverse are Brian Snook, David Ray, Gary Sherwood, Jonathan Pickens, Benjamin Handelman, Chris Locke, Amy Bisson, Andrew Bettis, and Aaron Melzak. We also have our denizens of the Butlerniverse. These are the people who are at that $5 tier and up. The $5 tier is what unlocks those audio commentaries, but you don't have the exclusive Q&A. Those folks include Jared Rasher, Joey Zitzman, Stephen M., Sam Howard, Chris Morgan, Robert Medina, Bobby Craig, and Jason Hunt. Then we have the Travelers of the Butlerniverse providing support, whose names are in the thanks section. Of course, we have Mitch Godfrey, Martin Dahl, Austin Pierce, Jeremiah Mustard, and S.W. Chris. As always, thank you to all of you, and I guess we'll start with Patreon as far as what new things have been released. Of course, since the last of these updates was released back on December 27th, we have seen the next exclusive Q&A for the nobility of the Butlerniverse. So we had that new episode come up, actually as carrying on a continued conversation with some of the things that Chris Locke had said from a previous one. Then we also, of course, had our audio commentaries released this month. Now, Patreon supporters at that $5 and up tier are guaranteed 2 new audio commentaries each month, right now focusing on episodes of the Clone Wars in chronological order as they come out. So for that, we had those 2 episodes, Shadow of Malevolence and Destroy Malevolence, commentaries to play while you watch each of those. But as a bonus, because I just kind of felt like it and wanted to kick off the new year right, I did go ahead and put together an audio commentary for Forces of Destiny Volume 2, which is the half-hour minus commercials video that combines 8 Forces of Destiny episodes that's available on Disney's YouTube channel, and that aired on television. Went ahead and did a commentary for that, just released here in the last couple of days. So 3 audio commentaries rather than the guaranteed 2, and of course our guaranteed monthly Q&A. In terms of podcasts, the most activity has come from Star Wars Beyond the Films, which I host with Mark Herleman. It and the other one, Cloud City Casino, that I host with Michael Morris, are both found over at StarWarsReport.com. You can also subscribe through iTunes and things like that. As we left the last update, we were in the process of getting our year-in review together for Star Wars Beyond the Films, looking back at 2017. We now have 2 of those 3 or 4 episodes released. So back on January 11th, we had the books year-in review, which focused on books coming, of course, from Del Rey, but also from Disney Lucasfilm Press and other things. And then we have our year-in review focusing on the comics, not just the Marvel stuff, but also stuff from IDW and others. that we put out on January 25th. So 2 new episodes of Star Wars Beyond the Films, number 229 and 230, since the last update. Now, Cloud City Casino has been a little bit trickier because, of course, we were in the holiday season, and Michael, my co-host, actually the guy that started the show, Michael is a postal delivery person, which basically means that with him being a mailman, he is running around like crazy, especially during the holiday season, and it didn't seem to let up nearly as much as you would have hoped right after Christmas was over with. Added to that, he's had some health issues going on here in the last month. Don't worry, he will be fine. It's just one of those things that slowed things down for us as far as episode production. So we do only have one new episode of Cloud City Casino here within the last month. It is episode number 78, in which we talk about the Battlefront 2 multiplayer. We talk about our impressions of The Last Jedi and bounce ideas off of each other. We talk about the cancellation of Star Wars the card game for Fantasy Flight Games, their living card game, or LCG, and things like that, all in an episode released on January 15th. Again, you can find Cloud City Casino and Star Wars Beyond the Films at StarWarsReport.com. Just pick their tab from the podcast listing up at the top. Now, the biggest bulk of new content has actually come through the YouTube channel, where you are probably watching this video. Back on December 30th, I kicked off another round of episodes for From the Star Wars Home Video Library, one of the main shows on this channel, as we neared and then eventually crossed the line of 1,000 videos on the channel. If you count the ones that, for instance, are the Patreon Q&A that are unlisted, that are on the channel as a place of hosting, but not something that is searchable. So, we picked up with episode 21.6, the Making of Star Wars Corn Pops box. That's looking at the Corn Pops box with the advertisement on it for that ability back in 1995 to order yourself a copy of the Making of Star Wars on VHS with some box tops or some proof of purchases. Then episode 132, looking at an early Japanese A New Hope Laserdisc. And then 133, looking at the 1986 Japanese full-screen Laserdisc trilogy. Not a set, but the 3 different individual releases. Episode number 134, looking at the People vs. George Lucas on DVD. 135, Jedi Junkies on DVD. 136, looking at the awesome The Force Awakens Blue Fans one-click box set from China. Episode 137, looking at the Star Wars Highlight VHS from Panasonic in Japan. Episode 138 looked at the Elstree 1976 documentary. 139 looked at the Plastic Galaxy, the Making of Star Wars Toys, the Story of Star Wars Toys documentary. Then episode number 140 took a look at the prequels Strike Back, A Fan's Journey. Plus, along with all that other stuff, back on January 14th, I released version 3.2 of my From the Star Wars Home Video Library timeline. The Star Wars films and TV series on home video. That is that video timeline where basically I go through my entire collection, pulling stuff, and record bit by bit on my table with a Star Wars playmat for the Action Miniatures game, of all things, to show you sort of a visual walkthrough of Star Wars home video that actually starts in 1976, because it does mention other things happening like the novelization of A New Hope coming out, and worked its way all the way up until the present day now. So look for that From the Star Wars Home Video Library timeline 3.2. All previous versions have been set up as unlisted now, so they're still up there if I ever need to reference it or go back to it or share it again. But right now, only the current version is showing up, so I don't have a bunch of people that are saying, "You forgot such and such from 2017!" Well, yeah, that's because you're looking at 1.0 that was made way before that. People don't tend to actually look at the dates on videos before they bitch about something not being included, so I'm playing it safe. The other ones are unlisted. You are going to be able to find, of course, the new one on there. Along with all of that, also did some more Battlefront 2 live streams. We had the Battlefront live stream podcast, as I call it, episodes 83, 84, and 85. And then I also did a live stream, actually today. It's why my hair looks a little different. It's kind of like smashed down a little bit in the front. I popped on the PlayStation VR headset and did a Let's Play type of stream today for The Inpatient, the new PlayStation VR game from the team behind Until Dawn and Until Dawn Rush of Blood. On January 7th, I also did another quick Let's Play of some more of Skyrim VR for those who wanted to see it a little bit later in the game with some other abilities and missions going on than what we had in the first live stream of that. Then delving into cards and card games, We had the Swayed by the Dark Side Force Pack released for the Star Wars LCG from Fantasy Flight Games. So I did a rundown back on January 3rd of all the different objective sets and the cards that are inside that Force Pack. And then I finally got a chance to go back to my Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games video series to look at Ascension Valley of the Ancients and Ascension the Year 4 Collector's Edition. And then while I was recording those, I went ahead and pulled out one of my other favorite games that's not a deck building game, called the Dresden Files cooperative card game, and did a quick overview not just of the game and how it plays, but of all the different launch products, the main game, the expansions, the exclusive stuff from the Evil Hat online store, and that sort of thing, all together there in one single video about the Dresden Files cooperative card game. As for the Star Wars Timeline Gold, which of course you can find over at StarWarsFanWorks.com/timeline, I've been putting in work on the edition that'll come out later this year, probably close to October. But to be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of time to get into it, and I've been a little bit discouraged lately, I'll be honest. A couple of things hit. One was that while I was working on summarizing a story called Destroyer Down, which is this Star Wars Adventure story that was exclusive to the Loot Crate mail-away service thing that I, of course, wound up getting on eBay after the fact, I was working on it, and it's kind of an intricate story for that series in that it's 6 different story segments, 3 each for the present and the past. Destroyer Down's the present, which is around the time of The Force Awakens, and then you got Ghost Ship, which is actually more around the time of the Battle of Jakku. It's got some errors in it that I was trying to figure out, like why is Rey Sloane called a Vice Admiral in Ghost Ship when she's supposed to be a Grand Admiral at that point, though there was some question of whether she was supposed to be an Admiral or Grand Admiral. Had to dig into that. But I finally got that stuff sorted out and got most of the summary written on the timeline, and Microsoft Word started saying, we can't show you this font anymore. You're out of memory. And I couldn't see half the text on the timeline. And I wound up losing all of the Destroyer Down work that I had done, basically because Windows was doing an automatic update in the background again to break Windows 10 a little bit more than it already is. And because that update was going, it screwed me over in trying to actually summarize that initially for the timeline. So I wound up redoing most of a night's work, but it is on there now. There was another thing, though, that's kind of got me a little bit down a tiny bit, and that is, right now, I'm in the middle of summarizing one of the single worst Star Wars books I've ever read in my life, and I basically read them all. The Legends of Luke Skywalker. My God, this book sucks. It is terrible. This is the one where, you know, in Return of the Jedi, it's a flea basically telling Luke what to do at Jabba's palace. That's how he saved everyone, not his own heroics. It was a effing flea that did it. If you listen to the Year in Review Books episode of Star Wars Beyond the Films, you know I kind of ranted about this book. But you see, I still have some notes left. I'm about, I want to say about halfway through summarizing it, maybe a little bit less than halfway, jumping through the different times. But it's one of those that's frustrating because, of course, the framing story of this ship going to Canto Bight, it's never given a date. We don't know exactly when it takes place. Presumably, it's meant to be around the time of The Last Jedi. Fine. Then you look back, and all the stories in it look back at a different time. How long ago? In many cases, no idea. Just could be any time between, say, A New Hope and what eventually winds up happening in the book itself. But then you get this one story that's the longest story that's in there, and you think they're giving you some dates. But it turns out not really, because you've got a character who, in that flashback story called Fishing in the Deluge, is this character named Aya, and she's 12. And it turns out that they give you hints later in the book that Aya is actually a stowaway in the book. So the stowaway and that character, if we knew the ages, maybe we could pin down a time. Well, it turns out we also know the age of another character in the book named Teal. Teal is 15. This stowaway is a few years older. Ooh, we can start pinning it down. Except when you start running the numbers, it makes it difficult for the flashback to take place at a reasonable time because Luke doesn't have Ben with him in the flashback. And it would happen around the time probably of Bloodline when Ben should be with him. So either Ben has gone off somewhere and we don't know what's going on, or, more likely, it takes place earlier and it turns out that the stowaway is actually not who we're given hints that it actually is. But we aren't given anything concrete in the book. like we almost never are given anything concrete in many of the recent publications, with Marvel Comics being the most notorious with it. And I kind of got to that point where I'm sitting back saying, you know what, if the people actually at Lucasfilm don't give a shit about actually pinning down the chronology of things, if they will say, we're going to be awesome and it's all going to be connected, see how this movie connects to this book, or this movie connects to this game, or this movie connects to this TV show, and they're doing all that intricate connectivity, but when it comes to the comics and the books, it seems like nobody cares, where they don't know the order of certain things, or certain events. For instance, in the year or so after A New Hope, the only way you're able to tell what order they go in is hints of how Luke's power has progressed, because even the writers didn't know what order they were supposed to be in. When you got a comic like Storms of Crate and a book like Leia, Princess of Alderaan that both seem to be purporting Leia's first time looking for a rebel base on Crate, and they don't jive or reference each other, it pisses me off. Because it's lazy. Because it's basically them saying, well, you know, we want to give the storytellers plenty of freedom, so we're going to let them tell this story, and we're going to give you a general time frame in which it happened. Sometimes, the 3-year gap, say, between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Other times, a gap of decades, and we're not going to bother to tell you when any of it actually happens. Not even give you a clue. Have fun. When you are someone like me who is very chronology-focused and continuity-focused, and you want to make sure things make sense when you actually start fitting it all together, because it's all supposed to be the same level of canon now, when it seems like they're playing loosey-goosey with it, yeah, it's frustrating, it's annoying, and it makes you sit back and say, I'm looking for answers. The answers probably aren't even there. So why am I wasting my time trying to fit all this stuff together when they don't seem to give a shit about actually making it fit together? When they will probably never pin down the stories of this to specific years, because you probably won't see much reference those stories, because they're supposed to possibly be wise tales and some of them actually being true. You don't know the veracity of the stories. Because they will probably never be referenced as valid stories, we probably won't see those ever pinned down, and this will always be nebulous. It's frustrating. And it kind of gets to that point where I'm like, if they don't care, why should I? Why should I be busting my balls every month, every year, for 20 years to try to make this all work and try to fit it all together, when it seems like with this new relaunch they are taking a less and less active approach at trying to make it fit chronologically. Elements? Sure. References? Sure. Chronology? Not so much. And it really sort of pushes me towards that edge of saying, you know what, maybe it's time for the timeline to end. I'm not at that place yet, but every couple of months or so, I start feeling that again. I start feeling that sort of dragging down, because I don't feel like the people that are the powers that be for Star Wars care nearly as much as the fans do. Now, I won't say that about the movies. I won't say that about TV. Maybe not for the games, depending on which game we're talking about and the connectivity there. But it seems like the licensees just don't care. A lot of times about the chronology of things, especially Marvel putting out all kinds of stuff around the same time and only ever really caring that it lines up chronologically if they're going to do a crossover. Otherwise, not being able to tell you when does a Han Solo miniseries take place, when does a Chewbacca miniseries take place, when does this take place in relation to that, and so on and so on and so on. You have some people out there that care. Jason Fry, I think, cares and does a very good job with this stuff. Dan Wallace does a good job with this stuff. Charles Soule does a good job with this kind of stuff. Kieran Gillen is doing a good job with this stuff. But then you got other people that are just like, it's a Star Wars story, we're making money, why do I care about specifics? I'm still going to make the cash. And that's not the mindset I would hope to see. And I like to think that's me projecting frustration so that it's not actually what they're thinking. They're not actually as cavalier. It's just the looseness of the way that they play it make it look like it's that cavalier, and my frustration puts the darker spin on it. I hope. But it does get frustrating, and this was one of those months where it's just like over and over again. The frustration of not feeling like there are answers to be found, and it's all just friggin' guesswork again. It's not supposed to be guesswork. You're supposed to at least have a sense of when this might have taken place. And sometimes you just don't get anything like that. And that book is one of the worst offenders. So I'm sort of in a slog trying to get through that. and then I need to summarize Canto Bight. I need to read through the rest of Rebel Files and get that summarized, and a few other things, read through some of the comics to get summarized, though I'm mostly caught up on the comics, get some of the last Forces of Destiny episodes summarized. It's always like this at the beginning of a year where I've got a backlog that's building and building. But as of right now, just so you know where things stand for the timeline, haven't really touched much for the Legends timelines at all, or the appendices yet at all. But for the story group canon timeline, the title has been added for the Path of the Jedi Cine story comic, and then titles and summaries have been added for The Last Jedi film, Heroes of Mandalore Parts 1 and 2, Forces of Destiny Volume 1, Captain Phasma Part 4, Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic Part 3, Legend Found Part 1, Remastered Part 1, The Dying Light Parts 1 and 2, Ashes of Jedha Parts 1 and 2, Pest Control, Adventures in Wookiee Sitting, Destroyer Down, The Ghost Ship, Tales of Hope and Courage, and Chewie and the Porgs. And then I've added information for The Last Jedi's Visual Dictionary and The Last Jedi's Incredible Cross-Sections book. So there's a fair amount of new stuff on there, and I'm going to continue, of course, adding them as we go along. And thank goodness we don't have another big, huge wave of books coming that we know of as we head towards the Solo film. So hopefully I'll be able to get caught up fairly well, and eventually, as we get towards, say, October, you'll have a new edition coming out. But yeah, it was just one of those months that's just kind of a little bit on the frustrating side. As for other stuff, I think I mentioned I was going to show you at some point the book that has my newest Star Wars essay in it, my afterword, but I don't think I ever actually showed you the book itself. That was published in A More Civilized Age, Exploring the Star Wars Expanded Universe recently. Has an introduction, a foreword by Timothy Zahn, and then I do the afterword in the book. Mine is, again, in the back, because it is the afterword. Finding our lack of blind faith refreshing. Why a love of the saga means being critical. So, 3 of these books from Sequart, 3 essays, 1 in each. Looking ahead, I'm actually working right now on a pair of essays that are somewhat shorter that I'm hoping to submit to a similar Sequart book that's coming out on a different sci-fi franchise. I know, not Star Wars. Amazing. So, hopefully I'll have news on that here by the time of the next update. I am, of course, continuing to work on the timeline. Mark and I will be meeting at some point soon online to do a recording for our next year in review episode, focusing on probably the games next time. It may be an episode that also folds in home video stuff, the movie, the TV stuff, or those may be 2 separate episodes. Once Michael is back up on his feet, we'll be doing more episodes of Cloud City Casino, probably focusing next time on the DLC mission Resurrection from Battlefront 2. Livestream-wise, I don't expect a lot of Battlefront 2 ones in the near future, just because I'm getting kind of tired of the game, and they haven't been putting out much in the way of new content. That'll probably kick up again when they put out the next season of content. You'll probably be more likely to see a PlayStation VR Let's Play again before the next of the Battlefront livestream podcast things on YouTube. As far as from the Star Wars Home Video Library, I actually have some stuff already to show you. We have reissues to show in an upcoming episode, or episodes from the UK of Rogue One and The Force Awakens. And then the other thing that's been going on, of course, is this. Alright, so if you've been following for a while, you've seen this sort of evolve, because these were just regular bookshelves with the books sideways, pressed back against the back like a typical bookshelf. But I ran out of space. I've got 4 of these towers, going all the way to this wall over here. Then there's these wider ones that are about the width of 2 of these, and I've got 2 of those over here that are all for books, about 9 to 10 feet against the wall of books, going up, I don't know, 6 feet, give or take. And then on the other wall, the opposite wall, with a window in between them, I have my 2 bookshelves that are like this, that have all my home video stuff on it. Well, those are getting overly full, so I've had to turn stuff on its side and stack it instead of making it look all nice and neat. These I did the same thing for, but I was still running out of space. So I wound up going through and basically doubling them up. So like you can see here, you've got a Tarkin, the 2 different copies of Bloodline, the signed and the otherwise one, and other novels behind it. But then here's another layer of books in front of it, and then some even to the side. So I've had to go through and do that. So all my Legends stuff is over here, goes up to about here, goes 2 towers, and then up to about here, then gets into kind of odds and ends stuff, starts getting into canon, carries it on down to other books and stuff down there. That allowed me to basically clear out these two shelves for now, though they're going to start being filled up again soon. So I've got my Movie Next sets from Japan on display, along with the Blue Fans, The Force Awakens there, the Jedi Challenges box for the AR headset thing, the George Lucas AFI Life Achievement Award winner set, and then framed. These are actually comic book frames you can buy. And I put the 3 different versions of my Star Wars Tales comic in there, so they can sit up there. And then I'll just be slowly filling up these with other stuff, maybe moving around and finding some other bits and pieces of my home video collection to put up here in the background. I did keep Thrawn and Jaina up here, as you may have seen before, and just kind of trying to mess around with the space a little bit, because right now space is definitely at a premium here in my Star Wars office and in our house. Why space is at such a premium? I'll be very excited to tell you when I've got the okay to do so. But sometime in the near future, expect some pretty cool news coming at you that has to do with why everything is being rearranged and stuff right now. But, yeah, so it's been kind of a productive month. It's been a frustrating month at times, especially when I started looking at the space and I actually thought about selling off my Legends Star Wars book collection, or at least no longer getting all the different variants of the new books, the signed and Barnes & Noble version, all that stuff, and just focusing on one and selling off extras. That actually probably has been tipped over the edge of me saying, yeah, I'm done with all the variants and stuff. Now that you have to have somebody at Emerald City Comic Con who also wins a lottery to get a chance to buy the special Comic Con edition of The Last Jedi. No, I'm not jumping through that many damn hoops, and I'm not going to ask somebody to do that for me. So, yeah, probably done with picking up all the different variants and whatnot, at least for now. But it's been an interesting month. We are getting now into school visits and stuff for students, so it might be a little bit slow for the next couple of weeks. But I look forward to getting some more commentaries recorded. I actually just recorded a new commentary for Bombad Jedi, so still a few episodes ahead of the actual releases for the Patreon. And, of course, coming up in the next month, we'll have 2 more episodes of those commentaries released on the Patreon as well. Lots of stuff going on as usual. But, again, just a month that felt a little bit different. But it's also hampered by Michael being ill, my wife being ill a little bit, and me, for a little while there, not recording videos because I was very self-conscious. They got so cold around here that my skin started to split, like your knuckles and stuff, but I also had it split like right up by the side of my mouth, and I thought it just looked weird and looked ugh for a few days. So for probably a week to week and a half there, I just was not recording anything, hence recording a bunch later on, all this one big batch. So an unusual month, but a productive one, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you all for your interest in the various projects. I appreciate it. Thank you to the Patreon supporters. Again, it's patreon.com/NathanPButler, and I will catch you again for another update next month and plenty of content between now and then. Thanks for watching.